Boys, so we've got what is most likely the last manifesto that we're going to be getting for 3.20, and that's going to be curses. Now, interestingly, everybody thought that marks were going to be getting hit pretty hard here, and as far as I can tell, marks have not been touched at all. However, curses have gotten some relatively sizable changes, which we'll go over in this video. Now remember, boys, if you're enjoying this content, make sure to give this video a like, subscribe to the YouTube channel, hit that notification bell to stay up to date with all the latest videos. Without further ado, let's get into it. Right, so going with their new plan that they've got here with how they're laying these out, they do have a TLDR, but there is a decent amount of stuff that we have to read in the rest of this as well as the TLDR. So let's begin. So one of the big things that's changing is that hidden monster penalties against curses have been removed. This is notable for pinnacle bosses and very, very high-end powerful bosses. So as you may or may not know, there has been this issue where hexes are just extremely weak against very powerful bosses. Like it says later on that temp chains, I think, reduces the action speed of a pinnacle boss by 4%, which is literally nothing. You can get over double that from just chill if you just toss it on your build. So it hasn't really made very much sense to use actually like hexes most of the time on bosses. Is like, why would you not just use a mark if any of your, abilities can actually interact with it? So, as it said, hexes are now stronger against unique monsters and at least twice as strong against pinnacle bosses, but are weaker against regular monsters. Now, typically, it wasn't really that big of a deal if you actually like hexed regular monsters. On some yellows and such, we'll have to see how this pans out because, like, say some of those like big boy yellow mobs that we might be running into, if they're still really dangerous and hexes are significantly weaker against them, could be a little bit of a pain. Something that I'm happy about is that the Doom mechanic has just been completely removed. I honestly, to this day, literally never learned the Doom mechanic. I just avoided it because it just seemed annoying, so I just haven't messed with it at all. Maybe I'll actually play Hex Blast or something this league because, Doom was just annoying, so they've removed it, and they are reworking any abilities that used it to be somewhat similar. Occultist has finally been nerfed. It's taken basically forever at this point, but they've removed some of the power from the curse section of Occultist. They said that this is going back into the tree, but if you remember, a long time ago when they nerfed the poison stuff from Assassin and moved it into the base game, didn't really make the Assassin any better, didn't really make the Assassin good, it just made you play other Ascendancies. So if you're playing like a curse type build, you might still play Occultist, but we'll have to see. They have buffed Enfeeble and Temp Chains, which is good because I think that these curses are interesting in that it is always good if you are a lower skilled or maybe lower geared player. When you're fighting something like a pinnacle boss or something, being able to substantially slow it down or cause it to do less damage is actually a pretty impactful thing, and I don't think that there's enough sources of that in the game, so Enfeeble and Temp Chains being more powerful, definitely a big buff. Now they have said that to make it so that hexes are allowed to be more powerful without, the curse bots being oppressive as hell, they've basically made it so that some of the less accessible sources of curse effect, think like cluster jewels and such, the ones that, like certain builds were abusing the hell out of, those have been pretty much removed or nerfed in some massive ways so that you can still have a lot of hex effect, but those curse bots aren't so oppressively powerful anymore. Now, this is the bad part about this, is that hex gems have been rebalanced with the goal of ensuring that self-cast remains relevant compared to automatic curse application. Curse rings, curse on hit, all those kinds of things are getting some pretty massive nerfs. The vast majority of people were probably using mark on hit still at this point, so I don't think this applies to that because I don't see mark anywhere in here. However, if you were using any hex on hit, like any curse on hit type stuff, it has been nerfed probably pretty severely. So you're going to have to be self-casting now, so good luck finding, room in that for your build, wherever it might be. They've also said that they've buffed a bunch of hex-related unique items, which the ones that they've shown are pretty good, and they've added in some new unique. So let's go to some specifics here. There is actually a decent amount worth going into in the details here. So as I said, hex builds are at their weakest against monsters where they matter the most and strongest when they matter the least, because there is this reduction that happens with 33% on a unique boss and 66% on a pinnacle boss. So if you might have noticed, if you go into Path of Building or something like that, when you apply a curse to a pinnacle boss, it really doesn't do that much. It's still nice, but marks are substantially better because they, just actually do something powerful. Now, as I said, it's normal for monsters to have various hidden penalties, but there is a very, very big curse penalty, or specifically a hex penalty for these monsters. So since they have removed both these penalties, hexes will be consistently effective against all monsters in the game, which should be good. I think that it is better for them to be more powerful against the more powerful monsters and weaker against the monsters that don't really matter. Seems like a good way to go about it. Once we get the numbers, hopefully a good change. Now, I'm not gonna go too deep into the Doom mechanic because honestly I don't know anything about it. The like keynotes here are that they are removing the Doom mechanic completely, that things like Hex Blast are gonna be a little bit weaker at the very top end supposedly, and they are giving us a new Doomsday Keystone with a new Hex themed mechanic to it, whatever it might be. So that's cool. Now let's talk about this unique. Okay, so I know this is huge on the screen here, so I'm gonna bring it down here just a little bit. Anathema, 16% chance to gain a power charge when you cast a curse spell, and your curse limit is equal to your maximum power charges. So just putting this ring on a random character gives you 3 curses, right? Just base, 3 curses. However, if you're doing like a power charge stacking build or something like that, it gives you a pretty massive amount of curses that you can apply. Now, this isn't as good as it might seem. So one thing that you need to keep in mind is that for most builds, there's only like 2 curses at most that are actually good. However, with the buffs to Temp Chains and Enfeeble, just adding on this ring is now going to allow you to have Temp Chains, Enfeeble, and whatever your main curse was going to be before, which is pretty powerful, especially like early on in the league when your character isn't as powerful. Now, if you are a build that can benefit from a bunch of curses, go crazy with this. Like, it's gonna be a pretty powerful item, I feel. Then they're also going to be changing some other items in the game, like Heretic's Veil. They've basically given it like +1 to socketed curse gems, as well as some extra increased reservation efficiency for curses. This isn't huge, but it is pretty nice still. Now, going into the rest of this, now here's where we get into the nerfs. Now, they're talking about ensuring self-cast is powerful. This is something that GG has always tried to do, and I figured that this manifesto was going to give us a nerf to on-hit stuff, and it kind of has. So anything that gave you like a curse on-hit mechanic before, like say like a ring or something like that, apparently the way that they're doing it is they're making it so that it gets no increase to effect anymore. So on top of this, they're also like normalizing some curses and such. Like apparently there are some curses that are very weak at level 1 and some curses that are very powerful at level 1, making things like vulnerability or despair very good to have on hit because they're just so much more powerful at level 1 because of their base effect. So that means that those curses that were good are probably going to get nerfed on the on-hit modifiers, and the curses that were bad before are probably going to get buffed a little bit. So this is a pretty sizable nerf because most of the ones that people used previously are probably the ones that are going to get nerfed, and maybe a slight buff for some other builds, but I don't think this is going to be super impactful positively. I think this is mostly a nerf. So do keep in mind, if you want the full effect of curses going forward, you're really going to have to self-cast them. It says that they're going to be powerful, but it's just another button that you got to press. Now, what this means is that you could, as far as I am aware, put it on an Arcanist brand. I think that would still be considered, you know, like not proccing it on hit. It still would be casting the curse, so maybe that's okay for a lot of people. So I could be wrong there, but I'm pretty sure that it shouldn't really interact with that in any negative way. Now, they said once again that they are going to be nerfing sources of curse effect. That's fine. They're giving some of the cluster jewels some like extra interesting notables and stuff like that. Not really anything to go into here. We need to see those specifics to really talk about it. They have removed the 15% increased effect of your curses, and enemies you cursed have malediction from the malediction notable, and they have made the your hexes can affect hexproof enemies be moved from profane bloom to malediction. So yeah, occultist is getting a pretty sizable nerf. If you already took both of those nodes previously, it's going to be okay. This 15% increased effect of your curses is being moved to the tree, but unfortunately, relatively big nerf to occultists here when it comes to like the power of your curses. Now they say, well, because curses are going to be stronger, it still should be relatively the same, but typically when they say that, that means that, well, you move to a different ascendancy that has more power built into it in that regard. So we'll see. Occultist is probably still going to be amazing just because the other things that Occultist does are very good, but, you know, could be some openings for some other ascendancies going forward. Now, they talk about Temp Chains and Enfeeble. They want to make these like double as powerful as they were before or something like that, maybe even more powerful than that. We'll see. I really, really hope that these are powerful because Enfeeble and Temp Chains could be useful on a lot of builds, especially early on in the league when you really struggle to stay alive against some of those pinnacle bosses, especially in the harder versions of the game and such. So this will be really powerful. Really, really hope that they do these abilities some justice because they used to be really strong back in the day, but nowadays it's kind of just like, well, you do as much damage as you can and you hope to kill the boss. As they said, vulnerability and despair are now being changed a little bit because these were powerful. I'm assuming that this is a nerf. They're saying they're now focused on making enemies vulnerable to physical and chaos damage in ways that are generically useful to any build dealing those kinds of damage. This makes me think that these are getting nerfed. I don't know, maybe they're buffed, but who knows. Hex Blast is going to be slightly weaker, and in conclusion, hexes will be stronger against tough monsters and weaker against lesser monsters. Doom is being removed, and they have made some penalties to auto-applying hexes. And that is going to be it for the video. I'm kind of lukewarm on this. I hope that hexes are actually pretty good going forward. It doesn't seem, as far as I can tell from reading this, that marks have changed in pretty much any way. But I also want to give a quick shout out to my patrons. If you are interested in having your name show up on the left here, as well as some extra perks, make sure to go check out my Patreon down at patreon.com/bigducks. It's linked down in the description. And remember, boys, if you're enjoying this content, make sure to give this video a like, subscribe to YouTube channel, hit that notification bell to stay up to date with all the latest videos, and stay safe out there in Ray class. And I'll see you guys in 3.20, The Forbidden Sanctum.